The last time you were here, you had this really interesting chat about these two different sides to music. On one hand, you said you pick up the guitar to heal yourself.
Mhm.
So there's this sort of kind of comes from a place of heartbreak or hurt. And on the other side, music is such a joyful thing. So I wonder about a song like Winning Streak. Does that come from a place of sort of a desire to move towards that joyful side of music?
Yeah, that also comes from a changing horizon, if you like, having the luxury of being able to travel a lot. I've been, I remember dropping down to Jamaica 3 or 4 years ago, and been really struck by the music. Just being really struck by the message of the music and what it was. There was a great band called the Jolly Boys. I saw them a few times, and they were playing in this bar, and I just kept going back to see them because there was something about it was like life is happening, life's tough, and life is easy, and it's the same thing you find in the band or
Yeah.
in early, some of those early Dylan recordings where it's hard times come no more, but it's also it's hard times come no more. It's like it's good time, sad music, and there's something about that dynamic that I find really fascinating. And Winning Streak started off as a song called Losing Streak, and and it was a song, sort of to my friend, sort of to my dad. These songs are and it didn't feel right. I could sing the song and I enjoyed it, but it was kind of a bit moany and a little bit, and I said to myself, okay, here's a challenge. Turn it into a positive song. See if you can do it. Write it from the opposite perspective. And I did. And then I really could own it. I started singing it and I was like, actually, I really mean this a lot more than I do its opposite. So it is a thing. And, again, we were talking earlier on about someone like Curtis Mayfield. There is a responsibility if you're a musician or if you're given this sacred gift of being able to make music on any level, then you should really be sort of using it to inspire.
Yeah. There's something about the longevity of the song probably for you as a performer as well, right? When it's Winning Streak as opposed to Losing Streak up on stage every night.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. Because losing, and it was kind of like may your losing streak soon come to an end. It wasn't really a negative as much, but the losing streak, that term didn't feel right. It just may your winning streak never end. Just kind of had this like, I don't know if we're gonna do okay, but you know what? I wish you sixes every time you roll the dice.
Is that your ideal state of mind as a songwriter when you're kind of thinking about that place between, yes, there are hard times, but let me put that happy swing on it?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's I've kind of grown to have less and less patience, and some say it's turning 40, but I've grown to have less and less patience for people who just moan and who whine. And you hear a lot of it in music. You hear a lot of it in the music I like too. A lot of bands that I adore, but you'll hear a lot of whining too. And I find it's an easy perspective to take because it's kind of somewhat safe. It's kind of somewhat cool. You're not risking anything. There's no vulnerability in moaning. There's no. It's just a kind of it's a set place, and there's no. So it gets much more interesting and much more vulnerable when you're willing to stand up and go, "I'm with you, man. I'm on your side. I'm here for you."
Do you think part of it is time, maturity, evolution?
For me, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, absolutely.
Yeah. Your first solo album, Rhythm and Repose, was described as sort of a 70s, had a kind of a 70s vibe to it. This seems like a little bit more of a return to singer-songwriter roots. Is that fair to say?
I didn't really think about it until I was almost finished it. And I realized that a lot of these songs sound quite traditional. They sound kind of timeless. And timeless in the sense that they're not necessarily, they could, a couple of the songs could have been written in the last century.
McCormick's Wall
and Lowly Deserter, which sounds like a Civil War song. It's kind of like very interesting perspective. But I didn't set out with a particular aesthetic. It was just the way I think when you're trying to get a lyric across and you're trying to get a sentiment across, the music takes a back seat. And when the music takes a back seat, you don't think about it too hard. And so the music ends up being what it is. And I remember on the tour I was on last year, that song Deserter came, and I remember playing it, and Curtis Folks, our trombone player, started playing this like New Orleans-y kind of groove, like, and the drummer got in behind that, and then the next thing, the whole song had a different feel altogether, and I was delighted with it.
You talked about this being lyric driven in a lot of places. You've also said you really dug deep for these songs. Is that what you mean in terms of the lyrics, first and foremost?
Yeah, I wanted to write these lyrics in 3 or 4 different versions. Each song, I wanted to just, change like I like the song, but am I really owning it? Can I really 100% own every word of this for myself? You know, it doesn't have to. It's not about, because you know the problem is sometimes when you pick up a pen, you become a snob and you want to be smart and you want to be clever and you want to write something where people are going to think that, oh man, he reads, you know, whatever, you know, you just. But the problem, so you want to get to a place where your song doesn't breathe any of that. It just breathes some kind of essence
A
of
more generous intention than that.
yeah, and actually, it's kind of difficult to get there. So I rewrote these songs a bunch, and you know, a lot of it comes down to halfway through the recording of this record. You know, the producer Thomas Bartlett, my friend, took me aside one evening and he says, "Glenn, you know, I gotta tell you, it's no good. It's not good."
How deep were you into the record at that point?
You know, we were a couple of sessions in,
Yeah.
you know, and I was like, whoa, you know. I remember reading in the Leonard Cohen biography, I remember reading about Walter Yetnikoff when Leonard delivered I'm Your Man to the Sony in America. I remember Walter Yetnikoff calling Leonard into the office and saying, "Leonard, we all know you're great. We just don't know if you're any good." And it was just like, and basically my friend Thomas was giving me the same spiel, which is like, "Len, I love working with you, but this record is no good." And it really hurt me, like it hurt me and it knocked me. And I got to say, I really feel like this record is a better record for that knock. Because I was kind of disconnected. I don't know where I was. I was tired and I've been touring a lot and I kind of guess I wasn't connected with it. But man, did that kick me into touch. I mean, I wrote these songs and rewrote them until I was happy.
What do you feel like you were disconnected from?
Sometimes I think if there's some success in your life, you know, because struggle is a very specific place. You know, when you're struggling to get your song heard, you know, it's you against the world. There's a kind of there's an honor in it. There's something about that that's poetic and interesting. Whereas success is a different thing. Success is when it gets like, okay, so you've had a bit of success. Now you really have to prove something. Now you really got to be good. And if you're not going to be good, then what's the point? You know, what's the point in you? What's the point in Glen Hansard and his career? You know,
Totally different kind of challenge.
absolutely. And new. It was really new for me.
Is that what you mean then by digging deep, reconnecting with, well, I guess reconnecting might not be the right word because it's a new stage.
It's a new period.
So finding your truth in this new phase of your career.
Yeah, I think it's really important to ask yourself, you know, do I still like music? You know, it's that simple of a question. It's not do I still like music? Do I still enjoy making music? Do I still enjoy traveling and singing music? Yes, I do. Well, if you do, then get serious because now there's no messing around now. There's, you know, it's like all the goodwill in the world that's behind you. Now get to work.
And that's inspiring though, that opportunity to work.
Absolutely, and I feel blessed, you know, and I'm very happy with the record. I eventually turned it in. It took me forever, and I, you know, Howard is sitting in there. He'll testify. I hemmed and hawed, and I changed the title name, and I changed the track listing, and I changed everything. And then I said, let's not put it out at all. And then I went through all these other variants of feeling really unsure about it. And then eventually we hit on a track list, and it just sort of went, oh, now it's a record, and now I'm proud of it.
All the puzzle pieces fit together.
They just seem to work, yeah.
So your producer knocked you a little bit.
Yeah.
But you found your place. Were you surprised by what you found when you had to kind of go take another look at this project and dig deeper? Were you surprised by anything that you found?
Yeah, I was. I was surprised at the fact that I could go there. I was surprised at the fact that I could sit down. And because I always thought of the craftsman as being someone I wasn't that interested in, the person who sits down and crafts a lyric or crafts a melody. I always prefer the idea of inspiration, that it hits you like in a flash and you got to be ready and be on, you know. Whereas at this time, the initial flashes of inspiration, you know, they were fewer, and so I had to sit down and work, and I had to sit down and whittle and and shape, and it really changed my style. And Thomas saved me years in that one comment. I mean, and this is if there's a message here, it's be honest to your friends. If you're honest with your friends, you're going to save them years of pain. And years of self-discovery and years of figuring stuff out for themselves. Just tell them. Just like, I'm your friend and here's what I think.
Yeah. Because you're probably going to hear it at some point.
From someone else.
From someone else. As I was telling you, when I listened to this record, I mean, anyone who hears this record is going to hear the uplift that's there. But even just looking at the song titles, you got Grace, you got Mercy. In the lyrics, you have Forgiveness, you have Shelter, you have Good Samaritans. There seems like there's something spiritual to the uplift here. Yeah.
I mean, I definitely find myself using the language of redemption and more of the spiritual. And a lot of it is shaped by, you know, what's going on in your life at the time. And I wrote a lot of these initial ideas while reading Leonard Cohen's autobiography, or not autobiography, his biography by Sylvie Simmons, which actually comes off a little bit like an autobiography in moments because he talks a lot in the book. He's very present in the writing of it. And Leonard has always spoken in the language of prayer, you know, and that I've always found that to be the most challenging language, because it's, you know, you've got to distill what your intent. You got to distill it down to a few words and say in a few words what you're really hoping.
What do you mean by language of prayer?
Like, to me, a perfect song. I mean, let's look at a perfect song. What is it? Because there are great songs, but there are very few perfect songs.
Pick a Cohen perfect song. Since we're talking about Cohen.
Well, Bird on the Wire is a perfect song. And the reason I mean, it wouldn't be my favorite Leonard Cohen song. I adore the song. It wouldn't be my favorite. There'd be other ones. But the reason it's a perfect song is because it's essentially a prayer. It's in the shape of a prayer. Like a bird on a wire, like a drunk in a midnight choir, I've tried in my way to be free. Right? So it immediately has the shape of prayer. And I think, you know, I'm thinking of a perfect songs. I mean, Marley's written a lot of perfect songs.
Yes.
Let's have a look. So One Love, Let's Get Together. No, let's go even to a different one.
Redemption song.
Redemption. I mean, these are prayers. I mean, essentially, they're songs for people. They're songs of the people. They don't exclude. They don't exclude anyone. They invite everyone in. And for me, like even when I look at Dylan and Dylan's best songs, I mean, Forever Young, which would have been a big influence on that song I just sang. You know, may God bless and keep you always. May your wishes all come true. May you always do for others and let others do for you. May you build a ladder to the stars, climb on every rung, and may you stay forever young. I mean, that's huge. And it's in that realm of, you know, it is folk music and it isn't religious, but it's deeply connected with the bigger picture.
That's a beautiful description. It's welcoming, not pandering, but hugely welcoming and inviting. A lot of these songs, like Winning Streak that you just performed, that you said is sort of inspired by your father, sort of inspired by a friend.
Yeah.
A lot of these songs are uplifting and they're addressing someone. And I found myself wondering, is he speaking to someone in particular, or is he sort of singing to himself? Yeah,
well, I think you're always singing to yourself a little bit too. There's always definitely a little bit of, you know, come on, Glenn. You know, you can do better. This is for sure. And there's a couple of moments where it gets very clear that I'm singing to myself. But then, you know, I've always loved that device that Dylan uses, where, you know, you got a lot of nerve to say you are my friend. When I was down, you just stood there grinning. And then he switches it on himself, and then he starts singing to himself, and he's got this wonderful way of stepping in and out of character. And I think songs, you need to allow yourself as a songwriter to do that and to be free enough to, because then you can own it every night. At the end of the day, it's about, for me as a performer, it's about being able to get up every night and own the song. You know, and a song that's 10 years old, I can still own it in a different way.
I'm curious about the album title as well. Didn't He Ramble? Where'd that come from?
Didn't He Ramble was the most difficult song on the record, and it eventually didn't make it. And I eventually had to let go of the fact that this song's not making the record. Didn't He Ramble, the reason I called the album that was because it was the most important song on the record for me, but it's not on it. And it's not that it's the best song or anything, but it was the one that was most important to me. And it was about my dad. It was explicitly about my dad. And it was the song, I tried very much, again, to kind of question one's intent. I tried very much to sing a song about my father that was basically raising a glass to him at his wake, because my father's passed on for 5 years now. But to raise a glass and say, well, instead of wasn't he a good guy, wasn't he a bad guy, just say, well, didn't he ramble? Didn't he roam? Didn't he wander so far from home? And didn't he come back? Or didn't he go down in the dark for too long? And don't we look good now singing his song? So a song that apportions no blame. It's not a song that's emotional, and it's just a report. And I really love, and I've kind of grown very close to my dad since he passed. And I love the idea of just taking all the blame out of anything I feel for him, you know, that the song, and it's almost like he was kind of listening to it going, no, it's not good enough. It's not a good enough tribute. Yeah. No, stay with it. And so I stayed with it. And, even for instance, 2 days ago, coming here on the flight, we stopped through Chicago, and I was saying to Howard, we could go to a studio. We could go to Albini's place in Chicago, get the songs of Hiya Boys in. We could record Ramble and maybe get it on the iTunes extras. Because I'm still trying to get it on. The album's printed. It's, and I'm still trying to get that song on there.
What is it about it that you feel like it's just not up to par yet?
It's almost like this. My dad's spirit is saying, no, not yet. There's one lyric you haven't nailed, and you haven't given me the proper tribute, if you like.
Is it hard to have the patience for that?
No, it's great. Yeah. It's great. And again, someone like Leonard gives you the courage to say, well, if it's not there, then wait. Just wait.
By Leonard, you mean?
By Leonard Cohen.
Leonard Cohen.
Yeah.
Now, I did overhear in the hallway, you have a great story of meeting Leonard Cohen.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah. When I was 15, I mean, back when I got into him, my cousin, who was older than I was, gave me loaned me his vinyl copy of Leonard Cohen's Greatest Hits, the one with the yellow cover, Leonard smoking in the mirror. And I was absolutely 100% captivated. Now, I knew Bird and the Wire because my mother had taught me when I was a kid. For my 5th birthday, my mother taught me the lyrics of Bird and the Wire because she was into him.
Your mom taught you those lyrics at 5?
At 5 years after my birthday, yeah. I remember she was washing me in the sink and she was like, she had the little record on, like a bird on a wire. Because I always loved the lyric drunk. Like a drunk in a midnight choir, I've tried in my way to be free. And it really meant a lot to me. And so when I got this record, it led me into Leonard in a whole other way. I mean, I was hearing these other songs. Famous Blue Raincoat was just so captivating and weird, and it had this atmosphere that was above the lyric. It was above the recorded. It was just this very odd sound, that had gone on, and it was a mystical place. And it was one of the early memories of how music can put you in this very, very mystical place
that you don't even understand yet.
You don't understand, no. And I still don't understand. And anyway, we went to see. He was coming to Dublin. Leonard was coming to Dublin on the Various Positions tour, and my cousin got me a ticket to go see him, and I was very, very excited. I'd never seen anyone play, and so I went. And Leonard was doing a matinee show and an evening show. And we went to the early show. The early show was obviously put on sale afterwards when the later one sold out. Yeah. And so we were sitting in like the 6th or 7th row watching Leonard. Couldn't believe it. My cousin was an epileptic, and so we had to be careful with him. And so he was always needed to be near the edge. But Leonard started Famous Blue Raincoat, and my cousin, through excitement, just went into a fit. And of course, when you go into a fit, you disrupt the whole situation because you've got no choice. Your body's just spasming. Yeah. And Leonard stopped the song and he said, "Is that boy okay?" And he called the John's ambulance over, and there was a little bit of a commotion in the audience, and the John's ambulance took us outside. And a man who obviously worked with Leonard, now I know he worked with Leonard, he had a pass on, and he came to us and he said, if you go to the hospital and you're okay, here's 2 tickets for the next show. So we went to the hospital. By the time we got to the hospital, my cousin was fine. We came back. We couldn't believe we got 2 more tickets. We were going to see him again. And we got on the queue, came in, and they put us in a special box. We were in like a kind of a fancy box because it was an old boxing stadium. It was a boxing ring, but it had been converted for Leonard's show. Okay. And so we sat in the box, watched Leonard's second show, absolutely loved it. And then as we were leaving, we were told to hang on a moment by the same guy. He said, "Just hang on a second." And Leonard came up to the box after the show and shook my cousin's hand and shook my hand. And I was 15 years old, and I really remember getting that sense that here is getting to meet the real thing. And I'm really committed to music being my life at that time, Wow. And something was sort of transmitted, if you like, from this Canadian poet to my hand, and I knew that I'd carry it, and I did carry it. And then 3 years ago, I got the most unusual and wonderful phone call to ask me would I be part of an evening honouring Leonard in the north of Spain, in Gijón. And if anyone wants to look up Leonard at his most eloquent, his acceptance speech from that time was just incredible. If you type in just Leonard Cohen acceptance speech Spain, it'll show up. But I sang Famous Blue Raincoat, and Leonard sat in the audience, and it was really. And actually, what's amazing is that it gets mentioned in the book, in the I'm Your Man. I had no idea. I was reading this book, and it was a huge influence on this album. And I'm reading it, and then my name gets mentioned, and I was like, "What?" It was such a trip, such a wonderful, what a gift.
Did you tell that story at the performance of meeting him?
No. But I told him afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, something was transferred. Now you write these songs, people play them at their weddings, their funerals, everything in between. How does that knowledge affect you as a songwriter, knowing that people live through your songs, live with your songs?
That's a very good question, and it's a very powerful thing when someone comes and, really, if I was to break it right down and say, and I sound really intense now and very serious, but if I was to break down absolutely what it is, why I do it, and what is the most rewarding aspect of doing it, it's to do with connection. It's to do with your songs being of use. I would like to write a song that someone can use. And when I say use, it might mean that they listen to it when they have a bath, or they might, or even further, they might use it in some kind of tribute way, as in they might use it to walk up the aisle to, or they might use it just play it for their mates when they're sitting around playing records, But the idea that your song actually has a place in the firmament of all those great songs that have existed, that it just has a place. One of your songs might exist in a way that, I want to hear that song. I don't want to hear any other song except that song and that version.
It has a place in people's life.
Has a place in people's life, and it's something that could be used. And, sometimes when I go into a pal's house, it's never lost on me if I look at their record collection or their CD collection, and I see, that maybe the Frames record or the Swell Season record or the Glen record is, it's down the bottom of the pile. Or it might be 3 from the top, just this idea that, that stuff really affects us,
Yeah.
It's like, so is my record being listened to? Because at the end of the day, you make records and you hope more than anything they're going to be listened to.
Was it always that concern for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's easy. Well, I don't want to say easy, but you always seem to come from this place that's emotionally honest, direct. Have you ever written from any other place?
Yeah, I have. I have tried, and it doesn't work. As in, like, not to say that I write from complete honesty. For me to sit here and say I'm a completely honest writer is just nonsense, because I'm not. Yeah. I write songs, and I write them, and I go for them, and I get them whatever way I can get them. It isn't. I don't sit in a place and put on like white linen and go, okay, I'm going to channel the spirit of. I just write songs, and some of them are the ones that are lies, the ones that are that aren't the truth. They just don't last. And that's the only downside, is that, sometimes you write a song and go, well, that was kind of a bit of fun to write, and it made me look cool, and it was a bit of a posture. Yeah. But actually it doesn't have any truth. And for me, as in, I can't own it. Someone else might really like it and might use it, but there was a Frame song called Fake, and I remember writing it in Australia. It was like the chorus, like, come on, the guy's a fake, what do you love him for? My one mistake was kicking in his door, and whatever. But I remember kind of like knocking it out. Yep. And it was a big beat song, and it got played all over Irish radio. And man, I was so embarrassed, because I knew that song wasn't a good song. It's not that it's a bad song. Yeah. I just knew it wasn't a good song.
And you can't shake it.
You can't. No. I just don't sing it. That's the only revenge I have.
There are some songwriters that try to come from a good place, and that's kind of where they go naturally when they write songs. And at the same time, they do love their guilty pleasures, their sugar-coated pop songs. Yeah. Is that you, or are you more a fan also of the sort of songwriting school that you come from?
No, I love all music. I really do. I mean, only last night, myself and Peter Katz were hanging out talking about Step in the Name of Love.
Love that guy.
Yeah, he's a beautiful dude. Yeah. Talking about Step in the Name of Love, the R. Kelly tune, the 12-inch from the Chocolate Factory album. That record, that remix is like, it's unbelievable music. Yeah. And so, no, there's definitely not a thing of like serious songwriters or anything like that. I just love music, and I especially love music that's shot through with something transcendent. Because when you break art all the way down, it's either made to try be transcendent in some way, or it's made to just be commercial. Yeah. For instance, if you look at paintings, like, so you go to Prague and you see there's guys at the side of the street, and they've got these wonderful, paintings of the rooftops of the old city. And the paintings are beautiful. Now, I'm on holiday in Prague, and that's a beautiful image. I might buy that painting and go home, but that guy makes that painting every day. Yeah. Because he knows it's going to sell. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, and that's fair play to him. He makes that painting and people buy it, and he has a good living. But then there's the other guy that sees the rooftops of Prague and sees a whole other scene and paints that, and it doesn't have any reminiscence for the tourist of their holiday. It might be a splash of paint and a a piece of his fingernail. Who knows what it is, but his art is actually reaching. It's reaching out, even though it has no audience. It's reaching out, and we of course there are so many musical versions of the same thing, but one can only hope that what you're doing is somewhere. I guess you can hope that what you're doing is your own version of transcendent, and if people buy it, then great. And if they don't, I think as a songwriter, as an artist, you need to be heard. I think it's important to be played on the radio.
Yeah.
I think, otherwise you're not able to get in and there's no dialogue, there's no conversation.
There's a lot of artists that shy away from that ambition, though.
Absolutely. And I understand it. Mm-hmm. But it's based in a fear that I'm not interested in. And that fear also breeds cool, and that cool I'm not interested in it because it doesn't serve anything.
That cool, that irony, that swagger, that's pretty common nowadays. Do you ever feel like an outsider in 2015 because you don't aim for that?
Sure, absolutely. And it is a very self-serving and kind of exclusive and intimate place. But exclusive means it excludes people, and that doesn't interest me.
Back to that idea we're talking about, songs that welcome.
Yeah.
The intimate sort of tone of this record might remind people of the music you wrote for Once. Are there ways your work on that project has influenced the music that you've written since?
Yeah, I mean, those songs were, even though they were written in a hurry, I mean, some of those songs were unfinished on that record because we needed to have them written for the next day. And there was something about being able to sing from the character's perspective, the guy in the film and the girl. And myself and Marketa were sitting down after shooting every day and going, okay, so what's this song? So this next song. And John would give us a kind of a basic idea of what he wanted. And we would sit down and try to do it. And it was what really knocked me out was how much easier it was to write a song for a character than it was to write a song from oneself. And it's because we're so precious about our own, how does that make me look? How does that make me, we're so concerned about how we appear that actually it gets in the way. And to come back to this same sense of exclusivity and all the rest, there's something very beautiful in being super vulnerable and just doing it anyway.
And you've been able to carry that forward.
Well, yeah, and be able to sort of go back to that character a little bit. I mean, a couple of the songs on this record came in a way because I was asked a couple of years ago would I contribute a couple of songs for Mavis Staples' record, and that really excited me because I was like, oh, well, I can write for Mavis. That's gonna help me to get out of my own way.
Get out of your own head.
Yeah.
And she's a giant.
And she's amazing.
Yeah.
The songs were never used, but I'm kind of glad because I got to use them. And they now they're songs that I'm singing.
Once was obviously a cultural juggernaut. What does it feel like to be a part of a project that blossomed like that and took on a massive, massive life?
It feels hugely gratifying, to be honest. It feels really, just wonderful, Shad, to be able to be part of something. Because everything we do as creatives, creative people, we hope for the best, and there's that whole notion of prepare for nothing, expect everything, or expect nothing, prepare for everything, and you're always hoping when you make a record or you make anything that it's going to be great. But this actually did have it kind of, there was something about making it. I was really proud of it, and we were all really into it, but we didn't really expect anything. I mean, the initial plan was to sell it out of the back of the car, to go around, do a bit of a tour, play in local cinemas, show the film, do a little gig afterwards and sell the DVD,
And now it's had a life of its own.
A whole life of its own. And it was such a wonder to see it have that life.
And no conflict for you as far as where this looms in your legacy. You're happy with that?
I'm absolutely fine with it. Happy with it as it would be a different conversation. I'm absolutely fine with it. And two things I'd say about it is that it's really none of my business what people think of me, which is number one.
That's a tough thing for people to get their head around, though.
It kind of is. It kind of is a tough thing. And then the other thing is it was a wonderful chapter of our lives, and it's not something I feel like I need to ever go back to, but I'm just really grateful that it happened. But I had something to say there, but I've just walked down a corridor and there was no door.
No way. No
But I
way.
can't.
Well, we were talking about the distinction between being happy with something, being fine with something. I don't know if that reminds you of where you were going.
Yeah, I'm happy with that in part of the legacy of my and I had an answer for you, and then I went off on another tangent. You know, if I'm remembered as the dude who wrote this, you know, Falling Slowly from Once, that's fine with me. It's not gonna. That's not how I'm gonna remember me. I'm gonna keep on pushing through and keep on trying to write my song and keep on trying to write different songs. But it's fine. It's all I accept. I accept every part of it. You know.
One thing you've said about Once is giving you the gift of an audience. What do you
Yes.
hope your audience finds in Didn't He Ramble?
Well, again, to come back to what I said earlier, I hope, like, you know, I hope that Didn't He Ramble provides some kind of something that people can rely on. You know, that there's some, you know, it's a bit like someone who can make kind of nice furniture. You know, or functional furniture. A song is like a good functional piece of furniture, like a chair. Now, it might be, you know, have lots of detail and be very beautiful and very, you know, French polished and all the rest. But I essentially like the idea that a song is just a functioning thing. And if I write it well, it might outlive me, and it might live in someone's living room for 100 years. Who knows? Or it might go into a fire on a cold night. But I just like the idea that when you write a song, you're writing something that can last, or that has the possibility that can live. Because there is so much in a world where everything is so, you know, sort of disposable in a way, and just sort of throwaway. And, you know, the idea of making a record and it just, I look back at people like Van Morrison. I mean, something like Van, right? Look at him. I mean, Brown Eyed Girl, very beginning of his career, you know, he was doing like punk rock, Gloria, and, you know, Mystic Eyes and all that stuff. And then he goes into like Brown Eyed Girl, this huge hit. So he's like the Ed Sheeran of his day, if you like. He has this massive, massive hit. And then he goes off and kind of freaks him out a bit, and he goes off to New York and makes Astro Weeks. You know, this unusual, beautiful, strange, mystical jazz folk record. And then goes and makes, you know, Crazy Love and Caravan, and gets back into the pop world, and then goes off and makes Common One. Can you imagine his record company when he brought them Common One? Can you imagine their faces and like, this is Van Morrison, we want to hear Brown Eyed Girl. And he delivers, you know, Summertime in England, or, you know, When the Heart is Open. You're just like, oh my God. But, you know, that career is something to really aspire to.
Yeah.
Because you're just making your work. And it would be great to think that we could still live in a time where an artist has an opportunity to go make something that makes no sense to the last thing they did, and that you're allowed that space. But I kind of feel like it's less. I'd love to see artists feel the freedom to go make whatever they feel like making.
It liberates other people too, to see artists be able to do that. But either way, I think that's a beautiful, generous intention. Thanks so much for your time and your generosity with your time too.
Thanks.
Great chat.
Thanks, Shad.